As developers, we spend pretty much all our time writing code, building features, making things work. But what if I told you that the most powerful code we write isn't really about logic, but about psychology? What if we could use these simple, almost invisible design principles to guide how people use our apps, making them way more effective and, just more intuitive? Well, that right there is the whole idea behind a super powerful field you might not have on your radar: behavioral design. So, to really get what I'm talking about, we're going to start with a story. It's a little strange, but it's totally true. It involves a massive international airport, a really messy and expensive problem, and a common housefly. The question is, how on earth are those things connected? Okay, so this story, it's like the classic case study in behavioral design, and for a really good reason. It is the perfect example of how the tiniest, almost unnoticeable change can have a massive, and I mean massive, impact on what people do. So the problem at this airport was simple, and let's be honest, kind of gross. The men's restrooms were just consistently messy. This was leading to super high cleaning costs and obviously not a great experience for travelers. They had to find a solution. Now you'd think, right? They just put up a bunch of signs. Please aim carefully, that kind of thing. But they didn't do that. Instead, they did something completely out of left field. They etched a small, really realistic looking image of a fly inside each urinal, right near the drain. So, why a fly? Well, it's brilliant because it taps into a really basic human instinct. It gives people a target. Without anyone even thinking about it, without any instructions, this little visual cue, this nudge, it just guides behavior automatically. It doesn't force anyone to do anything. It just makes the right thing to do the easy thing to do. And the results? They were absolutely staggering. This one, super simple, super cheap change led to an 80% reduction in spillage. No, that is not a typo, 80%. For the airport, that actually meant an 8% cut in their entire bathroom cleaning budget. That is the power of designing for human behavior. That fly in the urinal is the perfect, if kind of weird, introduction to this whole field. So let's go ahead and put a formal name to what we just saw in action. So at its core, behavioral design is all about using what we know from psychology and economics to build environments that gently guide people toward better decisions. Now, the most important part of that definition is the end, without restricting choice. The fly didn't put up a wall, it just made one path a little more appealing. Look, as developers, we already live and breathe UX and UI, right? We're obsessed with making our interfaces usable, making them look good. Behavioral design is like the next level up. It changes the question from, can the user figure out how to do this, to, how can we make the right choice the most obvious and compelling one? It's all about the why behind the click. Okay, to really use these ideas in our code, we have to understand something really fundamental about how our brains are wired. This whole framework comes from a Nobel Prize winner, a psychologist named Daniel Kahneman. And frankly, it's essential for anyone who builds things for other humans. So Kahneman said we basically have two modes of thinking. There's system one, that's our fast, automatic, gut reaction brain. It's what you use to instantly know who your friend is in a crowd. Then there's system two, that's our slow, deliberate, analytical brain. It's the one you have to fire up to solve a really tricky coding problem. And here it is. This is the absolute key takeaway for us as developers. When a user is interacting with our application, especially for the first time, they are not using their slow, analytical System 2. They are running on autopilot. They're using their fast, intuitive System 1. We're not coding for a logician. We're designing for a creature of habit and instinct. All right, so the theory is cool, but how do we actually use this stuff in our code? Let's open up the toolkit and look at some specific, actionable techniques that I guarantee you've seen 1,000 times, but maybe you've never really put a name to them. We're going to zero in on 4 of the most powerful and, honestly, most common techniques that you see all over the web today: social proof, loss aversion, scarcity, and the incredible power of defaults. First up is social proof. This is basically our built-in tendency to think, well, if everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do. Think about it. When you land on a product page on Amazon, what's the first thing your eyes jump to?
For most of us, it's the star rating and the number of reviews. As a developer, this can be as simple as a database query that displays 177 people bought this today, or just highlighting your most popular pricing plan. It's using data to reassure a user that they're making a safe, popular choice.
Next is a real heavy hitter, loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing something feels about twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing. Booking.com, they are the absolute masters of this. That little red text that says, only 2 rooms left at this price, that's not about the great trip you're about to gain, it's all about the great deal you're about to lose. It triggers our fast-acting system one brain to make a decision now to avoid that feeling of loss. And right alongside that, you have scarcity and urgency. When something is limited, we just automatically think it's more valuable. You see this all the time with a limited time to act. Think about an eBay auction or one of those flash sale countdown timers. As a developer, a little JavaScript timer on a checkout page can be an incredibly powerful nudge to get a user to finish their purchase right now, instead of just walking away from their cart. And finally, oh man, this might be the most powerful and most subtle tool of all: defaults. We are just hardwired to stick with the path of least resistance, and that's almost always the pre-selected option. This is huge. Think about opt-in versus opt-out. A great positive example is how Gmail defaults to hiding images from unknown senders. That single default true in the code enhances security for millions of people, and they don't have to lift a finger. Now, as we're looking at all these techniques, it becomes pretty clear that this stuff is incredibly powerful. And that means we, as the developers, the designers, the ones actually implementing it, we have a really big ethical responsibility we need to think about. This brings us to the biggest question we have to ask ourselves as creators. What's the real difference between a helpful nudge, like that fly in the airport, and a manipulative, dark pattern that's designed to trick a user? Where do we, the people writing the code, draw that line? And really, the guiding principle, the line in the sand, is this. Are you being transparent? And is your design genuinely helping the user achieve their own goals? A nudge helps a user make a better choice, one they probably wanted to make anyway. Manipulation pressures them into a choice that really just benefits the business, often at their own expense. So, the next time you sit down to write some code, I want you to think beyond just the functionality. Every button you place, every API response you craft, every single default setting you choose has the power to influence behavior. The goal is just to be intentional about it. So I'll leave you with this question. What human behavior will your next feature change? And will you be guiding it for the better?